Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. As we begin this evening, I do wish to acknowledge that we are meeting on the territory of the Sooke Nation, so we do wish to extend our gratitude for sharing of the lands and the seas for so many generations in the past and many more to come. So as we begin tonight, I just have a few announcements that I would like to make. Let me just turn to the right page. So firstly, I wish to acknowledge and thank our staffer, Mr. Nicholas Diebler. Nicholas has been with us for the past year, and tonight will be his very last meeting that he'll be with us. In the past year, he has processed 6 development permits, 2 development permit amendments, 1 variance permit, 4 rezonings, 2 zoning bylaw text amendments, big files on cannabis, OCP amendments also on cannabis, and 2 cell tower applications. Mr. Diebler has also contributed to the development application procedures and fees and also helped with streamlining of the process. So we want to thank you for all of your work and efforts here and wish you the very best in the months and years that you have ahead of you. Years and years. We are very thankful there.
Not so much, but you years and years.
Years and decades, actually. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the community members and staff and councillors that participated in our Communities in Bloom event that was held last week. Big round of thank you to Ms. Laura Hooper and for Sarah Temple, who really pulled everything together for all of us. And of course, now we wait to see what the judges have to say of all of our work. So we just want to thank everyone for all their work there. At our last meeting, I had shared that Scouts Canada were setting up for their jamboree. So of course, that wound up with a major success. So I'd like to thank all the residents who volunteered, service clubs, as well as the businesses. The Scouts motto, of course, is leave no trace. And so it's hardly, when you go up there now, it's hard to believe that about 5,000 people were on that site every day. And from now, it'll move into 2 other areas, either to the Yukon or another site. The jamborees are held in sort of 2 locations, and it'll be some time before it'll circle back to Sooke, but we certainly look forward to seeing them again in the future. And of course, as Scouts pack up and move, the Sooke Fine Arts Society is setting up for this year's show, which kicks off on Thursday. And also just a reminder that the district is having its 20th anniversary community picnic and celebration in August on the 17th. And just to share that the district will be hosting the movie Avengers Endgame in the park that evening, and it is now the highest grossing movie of all time, apparently. It beat out Avatar over the weekend, so just a fun fact for everyone there. So, Council, I'd like to turn our attention to the agenda this evening. I will note that we do have our new procedural bylaw in place, so what that means is that we'll see our consent agenda, and also for items that are here for first and second reading in the bylaw section, those do not allow for public input. If there is to be input, they would be at the public hearing that would be held, and of course, if council doesn't approve first and second, then it doesn't go anywhere. So if anyone's here for any of those, then that has its own public place, which will be at the public hearing should those application advance to that. So on that note, I'll look for council to approve the agenda as it's circulated. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor, opposed, is carried unanimously. And that leads us to item 4.1, which is our development variance permit 5201 Sooke Road. So I'll turn this over to staff, please.
All right, so through your worship, 5201 Sooke Road is a development variance permit application to allow for an increase in the maximum permitted length of a small suite in the form of a manufactured home at 5201 Sooke Road. 5201 Sooke Road is a 5-hectare property located between Sooke Road and the Sooke Basin and is bisected by the Galloping Goose Trail. It's located within the Gateway Residential Land Use Designation and is zoned RU4 Rural Residential. The applicant is requesting a variance to section 3.30 of bylaw number 600, Sooke zoning bylaw 2013, to allow for a small suite in the form of a manufactured home which exceeds the maximum permitted length of 13 meters. The manufactured home is 13.4 meters long, exceeding the length by 40 centimeters. The approximate location of the manufactured dwelling is shown in red on the map on the screen. So the recommendation is that council authorize the issuance of development variance permit to allow for an increase in the maximum permitted length of a small suite in the form of a manufactured home at 5201 Sooke Road.
Okay, so 40 centimeters.
Yes. 40
Okay.
centimeters.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, before, if I can just ask you to hold, because there is public input.
Oh, okay.
So it has its own section
All
for
right.
public input, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bateman. Are there any questions of staff? Okay. Are there any members of the public here tonight to speak on the variance permit for 5201 Sooke Road?
Eleanor's 5526 Sooke Road. I just wanted to know if this portion of the highway is going to be, is that part of the highway that's going to be remediated coming through there? Is there going to be a highway coming through that property? Just a question, because they were
Okay.
realigning, and I'm not sure if it's coming through that part.
So you're meaning like the new alignment that
The new
is-
alignment,
that has
yes.
been announced? Okay, so
That
that,
hasn't been announced, that's right. The other one,
the one that hasn't been announced?
well, okay, the one that has been.
The 85 million, right. Is this between, maybe I'll turn that over to staff to answer.
I'm not aware of any impending roadway construction or or anything else that would limit this particular variance or anything that would have an impact.
Okay, just a question, I wasn't sure if that was part of the highway coming through there, if that's going to mess things up. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Lors. I suspect if it does, then the owner could take that up with the ministry directly. Other comments from members of council? Okay, so I'll turn to Councillor Bateman. Councillor Bateman has moved the recommendation then that council authorized the issuance of development variance permit to allow for an increase in the maximum permitted length of a small suite in the form of manufactured home at 5201 Sooke Road. And that was seconded then by Councillor Ebony Logans. Any questions on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor
Well, I'll
Bateman.
just speak to it. It's 40 centimeters, 1 foot 1 foot 3 inches. And it is in the middle of a forested area, unlike our variance permit on Austin's Place, which was in the middle of everything. So, yeah, it seems pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything from anyone else? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, item 5 is adoption of meeting minutes from July the 15th. We have a special council meeting and July 15th committee of the whole. So the recommendation is that the minutes of the July 15th special meeting, council and committee of the whole meetings be adopted as circulated. Mover for that, moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any questions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And I'll turn it to item 6, report of our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. McInnes.
Excuse me.
Pardon me, yes?
Were we approving both sets of minutes?
Yes.
I missed that. So I did have some corrections for
Okay.
maybe the whole.
Okay, so if we can just backtrack to that, please.
Just a
Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, a couple of, on page 17 of the package, under Councillor Beddoes, Sea Park expansion is on target and items previously cut to the Met budget have been re-added. So I'm not sure what cut to the Met means in this context.
Councillor Bateman, or Councillor Beddoes, is that a phrase?
Not a phrase that I'm aware of. Maybe the net, but I don't
think there's a
remember
missing
saying
word
that.
somewhere.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's, should be previously cut to meet budget has been re-added.
Oh, cut to
Okay.
meet budget, okay. All right. And I was just under my own, the minutes here of Councillor Bateman, it's concerns related to the checkout bag bylaw, the Victoria deemed invalid. So I think that's the City of Victoria. I think my main point was that, and this would be my recommended readjustment of that, concerns related to the Supreme Court of BC's recent ruling that the City of Victoria's checkout bag regulation bylaw is invalid without approval from the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. I suggested that the district seek ministry approval for our own pending checkout bag regulation bylaw, number 734.
Okay, are you, pardon me.
So
are
I
you-
did send that through to corporate services.
Okay, so if we can then adopt the minutes as they're amended, is that friendly for the mover and seconder? Okay, so then I'll recall the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Bateman.
Okay, just wanted to clear.
Okay, over to you, Mr. McInnes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have been busy spending as much time as possible getting up to date on various files. But beyond that, we have completed interviews for the Director of Engineering, and we do hope to make an offer before the end of this week. Until the position's filled, I will be acting Director of Engineering and providing direction to engineering, subdivision, parks, and environmental and wastewater staff. So hopefully that position will be filled fairly soon. Our leadership team is completing suggested changes to the district organizational structure, which we plan to present to Council in September. The new chart will include new departmental configurations, reporting structures, all in an attempt to gain some efficiencies and effectiveness in service delivery to the community. Directors are beginning work on service level review that we'll present to Council in the fall. We'll use this to determine as best we can what our current levels of service are and what changes Council might want to see in service level for the 2020 budget. And last, I'm planning an all-day staff meeting where we will close operations for a day and review various operational issues with all of the staff in the room, and that date will be published well in advance of the date happening. So that's all for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Okay, so that leads us into our item 7, which is our public question and comment period. So this is for all items on the agenda except for the ones that are here that may move to a public hearing or have public input in it, which we just received public input on. That sounded really repetitious. So anyway, if you could please let us know your name. We don't require your address, but let us know which item you're here to speak on. And there are 2 minutes allocated per speaker. Oh, and also there's a sheet, if you wouldn't mind writing your name on the sheet so that we can ensure correct spelling in the minutes, should you choose to approach the microphone. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Gail Hall, 2517 Sooke Road. I just wanted to speak briefly to bylaws in general. Is that okay? Because we got bylaws on here. Bylaws under the community charter must be attended by council. Council is the only one that can make a bylaw. So that's right out of the community charter. And this is probably the 5th year that I've done this and tried to get it changed because what we're doing is not legal. Staff cannot write a bylaw until council has put the bylaw together in their own language, in their own whatever they want, and then staff can write it for the actual wording. But it says, as exceptions, a council may not delegate the following: the making of a bylaw. But staff is making the bylaws, and it needs to go through council first, and then whatever. But anyway, I've been trying for 3 years, so. So this is what you want me to put my name on?
Yes, we'll probably have your name properly spelt already, I hope. So
Well, it should be, after all. Hall's not too. Hall's
perhaps, if I could just turn to our corporate officer, just for a reply back to that query?
I've personally worked in many municipalities, and it's always been the job role of staff to develop those bylaws. They're typically not done unless directed by council. So, for example, the OCP and zoning bylaw text amendments for the cannabis production were brought to council for information, and then at the June 10th meeting, the council directed staff to prepare the necessary bylaws. But, you know, no disrespect to council, but I don't think that they would understand the pieces that need to be brought together to form a bylaw. And that's what staff role is in the creation of bylaws.
But the community charter says a council may not delegate the following, and A is the making of a bylaw. So that tells me that through your community charter, council cannot delegate the making of a bylaw. So that, you know, this is, like I said, I think it's the 4th time I've tried, so maybe next year I'll try 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I will share, though, that at all the training that we receive, we've never received any workshop on how to draft a bylaw.
Well, you need to look at the community charter, section 154.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hall. Yeah. Are there members of the public tonight? Okay, could you please just turn on the microphone?
Margarita Dominguez, 2075 Other Point Road. I would like to talk about the beautification on the John Phillips Memorial Park and about your commitment to fulfill Brenda Parkinson's wishes and causes, which means in November 14, 2016, Brenda Parkinson asked you to do not dismiss the recommendations from the Parks and Trail Committee. And you say that it was the right moment to have a dog park. I would like to ask you to fulfill her wish. Now that the John Phillips Park is going to be reformed and is going to be improved, because our group took Jasmine excavating to all the parks that the district owns to give a recommendation, and they gave a recommendation to the committee that the best part for a dog park is that part over there. Or that is by the committee. That's all I ask. But I have a second public comment, please. Is possible? Yeah. I know exactly, I think that we all know what means an alternate director, alternate mayor or deputy, how it's called, that is going to replace you when you're not here. Now, are you going to be here in September and October, personally, as a mayor?
Most of the time?
Yeah?
I don't know if I hopefully won't get ill, but there's even an acting mayor in place right now.
No, I know that it's an active mayor, but I'm just asking because it's federal elections.
I'm not running in a federal election.
I'm just asking.
I will be away at
Perfect.
UBCM, I have federal board appointments, I'm not running in a
Perfect.
federal election.
Perfect.
I don't know why people think I am and
we are
not.
asking. Thank you very much.
I wouldn't let her. No interest in the federal election other than to vote, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Other members of the public this evening?
So, bear with me. The first one is the community washrooms at John Phillips Memorial Park. As to the letter by Mr. Nachtigall, I hope that you will review that again. We had an issue with the hotel, with some issues in there that weren't rectified and it cost the district. So I sure hope that you've read that letter from Mr. Nachtigall about, yes, and I hope you consider that and research this company before we go any further, so it doesn't cost us any more. 10.1 Sooke Core Specified Area Amendment. I don't know if you realize that when you pass that amendment that prior to that being outside the Sooke specified area, the limit was 2.5 acres or 1 hectare. And once you passed it, it's now 3,000 square meter, and it can go to 300 square meter lots. Just for your information, when you have to really thoroughly search what's in your packages. I hope you're aware, or if you weren't, now you are. Official community amendment bylaw.
Okay, so for this one, Ms. Lurs, if council moves it, it'll go to a public hearing, so you'll be able to comment on that.
I understand that, but maybe it shouldn't even go there. So that's.
Yeah, it's the new procedural bylaw that we have
Really?
now.
So now
Yeah.
you can't speak to any of these?
Not on any of the bylaws, because they'll have their own, should council move it, it'll have its own public hearing.
Well, I have a comment in regard to the veterinary clinic.
And that one is,
That's on, what page is that? Zoning 10.3, it's on 97, page 97.
that one is in the same, it'll have a public hearing, and that'll be the
Okay.
opportunity for
Well, I have a
public to comment.
question in this because I also gave a letter of support in this, and the letter I gave 2 weeks ago, and it's not in the package.
It will be supplied to council with the public hearing if it proceeds.
Well, I think council should have been aware.
Well, if it was emailed to council, council would have already received it. And as you see with the other items, when you asked if we had read them or not, all the correspondence here that shows up has been pulled and forwarded to this agenda by a member of council.
But that isn't in there.
But
That letter is
if
not
it
in
was
there.
emailed to council, council would have received it. I recall
Isn't that
receiving-
public information? Shouldn't that be out there for the public as well?
It'll come to the public hearing. Correct? Yeah. Yes, it would.
It should have been in this package. I think there's those changes are a little bit strange, and I think,
Yeah.
My opinion?
We went through a change in the, Councillor McMath. Yeah, we've gone through, we had our public, our new procedures deliberated at a committee of the whole. It came to council for first and second, for public hearing.
I guess it wasn't clear that the public wouldn't get all the
It's not
information.
that you don't get the opportunity to speak, it's just a little different format. And if you dislike the format, we had an opportunity before to speak to it. So it's nothing hidden, it's just a different format. And there was an opportunity to speak to that format. And so now you'll still have the opportunity to touch on these topics. It's just not tonight, nothing to do with the bylaws. So when it goes to the public hearing, then you'll be able to talk on each one that you want to.
So the bylaw can't be changed in any way, shape, or form due to...
Well, if council looked to change it, we would send it back to staff, and then we would have
Exactly.
it to come back again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you won't have public comment to say, I think that maybe shouldn't be in there, or that should be.
But it's a new process, so it's something that we can take into consideration, see how it works, and review accordingly. Councillor Beddoes wanted to respond.
Yeah, just that we voted on this. We're going to try it. If there's some amendments in 6 months or a year, if it proves too cumbersome or enough people from the public say they want something changed, then of course we will entertain it. But we wanted to streamline things, and this is what we came up with, and we're going to give it a whirl and see where we go. And if it gets too cumbersome, we'll make a change again. I mean, we're not out to, hide things from the public. That's why we're in a public forum now. So if it's a problem and other people bring it up, we will certainly have a look at it.
Okay.
Thank you for your input.
Okay, thank you. And I also have this information I was going to give you about cannabis in Canada, so I'll pass it on to your staff, and they can give you copies, because it's too expensive to make too many copies, but I hope
Yeah.
you read it.
They'll be able to take it and scan it and email it out to us. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Lors.
Alan Dolan, 2119 Melrick Place. I'm not sure if I understand it completely, but I'm here around which is 12.2, the Viewpoint Cottages. Is this the time when we talk about that publicly?
Yes,
Okay, it is the time.
that's correct, yeah.
We were confused back there. So there's a few more of us coming, and I guess I'm starting, and I wasn't prepared to do that, but I will anyway.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
You have seen the letter that was written by a number of concerned citizens, and so I'm not going to itemize all those kinds of things. I think my point would be largely that I know that we're reviewing the official community plan, and I think we really need to think pretty differently about what the official community plan is going to look like in the future. When I was at a previous meeting of the previous council, they spoke about, we were talking about the density of these developments, these particular developments, like at Viewpoint, and it was said after we had the public input period, one of the councillors said, one of the previous councillors said, well, this is what you asked for. This is what the official community plan says. It's densification. And I was new to the community, and I didn't completely understand that. And then I understood that, in fact, the area we live in, up there, Melrick Place and Winfield and whatnot, is in fact not part of the core and not part of the super densified area. And so what was going on was we were getting bylaw changes to change developments, to change densities, which weren't part of the official community plan. And so we really need to develop a plan that where that kind of thing doesn't happen, where we sort of what we want is what we get, and that doesn't even get into the whole idea of what new developments ought to be looking like. And I know that we have a lot of houses kind of on the books and have already been approved by previous council. There's an incredible need for developments that just take into account climate change, take into account a real changing world, both for our community and broader. This council has passed a motion on embracing the climate emergency, and these developments, if they even happen, are going to have to look very, very different. Houses need to be solar ready. They need to be passive solar. They need to have greenery and trees to produce oxygen and sequester carbon. And even incrementally small in our communities, they need to think about the watershed. They need to think about a whole bunch of different things. So we really need to make sure all those things are in the plan. So that's more on the preventative end of things.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, sir.
Name is Steve Millward, 6994 Melrick Place, and I want to speak to the Viewpoint Cottages. When the zoning went out for the R3 or whatever, I mean, I don't think anybody in the community has a problem with development. There wasn't really any hard laid plans, so it kind of went under the radar. But now we see this development of these small houses, right? 2 houses per 1 lot. And yeah, it meets the rules and stuff because one's a primary and one's not. But it's so dense, right? It is really dense. There's no room for storage, right? People are gonna have storing their stuff on the outside. It's gonna look ugly. There's no trees. There's no green space. There's not enough room for green space. I mean, they have this lovely artist rendition with trees behind it, but they cut all those trees down, right? Not only that, it's stuffed up in the corner on Melrick Place, and there's no traffic flow. Like that little community, it wasn't developed. The roadways weren't developed to take that kind of traffic. Parking is another issue that I see, or certainly the parking in this diagrams here meets the minimum for sure, but again, the reality is, people are going to have trucks, they're going to have boats. My concern is this stuff's now going to pour out onto Melrick Place, and our whole street is going to be lined with vehicles. I mean, when we moved there, I don't know, 19 years ago, I mean, our kids could play street hockey on that street, right? You can't do that. You take your life in your own hands, even today with the subdivisions built around the area. I mean, I understand it's progress, but this here I feel is too dense. I don't mind residents going in there. Houses with basement suites, at least there's a yard. We can have sheds to have storage. Kids can have trampolines. There's nothing around these. These are solid houses, and it shows green space and trees around there, but I guarantee you, in 5 years' time, after that's built and done, there's going to be stuff and rubbish will end up all over the place there. There's no storage. They're really, really small. Anyways, I see that I've ran over my time. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Millward, can I just have staff comment on this particular item of correspondence, because just procedure-wise, how this would unfold and whether or not this would even come to council because of the development permit and how that delegated authority works, just so that we understand that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Council, this is a delegated authority development permit. Unless a variance is required, it would not be before council. It would be approved by the manager of planning, myself in this case. We have met with the two gentlemen and a number of others in one, actually, I thought a meeting that went really well. And we've taken all of that feedback and then have since met with the applicant, and we're awaiting some changes to come on that application. So it may not look exactly as what has been shown there, but in terms of parking requirements, for example, they do meet the minimum. In fact, at the time of zoning, a covenant was put on the site to provide an additional 15 parking stalls, which they have then also done that in, as well as more. I think there's 17 additional. And then there was some concerns around screening, fencing, landscaping, which we are working on addressing. So.
Okay, so all of these comments then staff take into consideration and then work through it then with the developer.
I think I hear what you're saying, right? And it's unfortunate, but I think we're playing close to the rules. Like, we're really pushing the gray areas here, right? Again, I have no problem with development, and I don't think any of us do. It's just this is, you look at this and this is like, okay, yeah, it does say that, but this is really really pushing the limits in my mind here, right? And yeah, and unfortunately, okay, we have all these rules and process and protocols, and this, was able to get through that because it just walks that line as far as I'm concerned, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair concern, absolutely. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I share your concern very much. Smaller ones comes before us, which the same sort of density, which sort of drove us the distraction, and yet I don't blame staff. Their staff's working with the rules that we give them.
Yeah. But
maybe we should be changing that, and that's where it comes back to the OCP or something beforehand. We delegate this to staff, and the staff is very competent. But the whole concept of how we cram houses into these little spaces, and you're right, there's no trees, there's no grass. We're trying to get people to grow food at home with the food emergency, and there's not a place for a small garden or anything like that. So I share your concern, and I would tell you in the next couple of years, I would hope that we can make some changes along those lines.
Yeah, nothing but respect to the staff, right?
No, I'm not pointing,
yeah.
They're doing what they're instructed to do, simple as that, yeah.
Okay.
No, we appreciate the letter, of course, and for attending tonight to speak to it as well, and that gives us some good sense of where the community is as we go forward and deal with all the important planning documents, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I have a fair bit to say about this, but I was going to wait till the correspondence comes up. Is that wise? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
I wouldn't mind adding, Your Worship and Council, that all of these considerations that we're hearing from the public, we are applying that to our thought process around the scoping of the OCP. It's been recognized by staff over the past year that having better development permit area guidelines for forming character would be very helpful to us in guiding review of these types of applications. This is a DP, not a rezoning, so a lot of those complicated issues around transportation stuff were dealt with at that time. So this is really around form and character. That was all.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. turn on the microphone. Thank you.
My name's Jack Joseth, and I actually am the owner of the Melrick Place, and I want to just make sure that we dispel some of the concerns about this density, about trees, about the property. I was asked when I came here, and I've been a developer for 40-plus years, one of our projects I'm very proud of is Dockside Green, which was the first LEED Platinum project on the planet. So as far as the solar issues or what we're doing with this, the whole idea here is to get attainable housing. One of the reasons is someone like my sister, who's a teacher for 40 years, is just retired, where do they go find a home that they can afford? So this is an affordable attempt to have incredible green space, all of the latest technology to be able to move forward so that we can future-proof. But the existing bylaws allow for a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot house, a 1,000 square foot suite, and I could put a 3,000 foot house on and another unit back there. The idea here was to do something very unique so we could hit the attainability factor. The green space in my renderings, I don't mind having a covenant say that it's that or more. There is storage built in so that your kayak, your barbecue, your small garden in the back is all part of the development plan. We do own West Coast Super Storage, so we are planning on having storage for people, every one of these units. This hits a rental market and an ownership market that nobody has touched. Now, if this is a real problem, I just walk away and say, go build the stuff that's right next door. I'm too old, don't have any interest in that. It's just regular stuff. I think this is an area that's not been looked after, and I really recognize the concerns. I don't have any problem with any covenant that somebody wants regarding parking. We've gone above and beyond what's been required. I didn't touch a tree. I haven't touched a tree. I am so disappointed the trees were taken down the way they were. It's just an atrocity, but I had nothing to do with it. So I can't glue them back together, but I can certainly guarantee if you go look at any project that I've been involved in, you can see that landscaping is our #1 tool, and being sensitive to the neighborhood, the same thing. But we've come forward without even asking for a variance to live within the bylaws that are there. And when I met with head planners, one of the biggest issues was, let's do something unique and let's try to create award-winning projects in Sooke to make a difference. If that's not the case, or this isn't something that's welcomed, or at least we're not going to get a try, you'll never get anything that's affordable and tasteful. You'll just get more of exactly what the same is. And so if that's the case, I'm happy to listen, and I'm happy to make any accommodation that's reasonable. But I think with this particular one, we should consider that if we're not going to try this, then where will it happen, and how can somebody do it? I've figured out a way that we can work within the existing OCP, the existing bylaws, the existing covenants, and create an affordable and an attainable possibility. So if somebody has concerns that they want me to address by way of covenant or guarantees, happy to do it. But I don't want it to just be thrown out because we feel like, gee, this is something that's new or somebody's trying to play a trick. There's nothing like that at all. The trees, I will put trees back. The traffic, we've talked about having traffic studies. The traffic that's there, if I build bigger houses with more units, then you're going to have a big problem. The people that will live in these houses have no ability, one, to have big trucks or cars or boats. There's no space for it. I don't want it. It won't be in the bylaws for the strata, so it's not a concern. As far as concerns, the beauty of the strata is we can have it in the bylaws where people can't even have a towel out on their rack. It's just not even a concern. So if you want those covenants built in, no problem, because we will control this as something that I think we can all be very proud of. And I wouldn't put my name on it if I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I'd like to look beyond some of the concerns, because I agree with them. There's not one thing that anybody is saying that I don't agree with. We'll just have to address those together. And I'm happy to stand up and give my word, which has been for a long time very valuable, to say, we're going to try to do something special, not just the same old stuff. So I'd like that to be put in perspective when we listen to some of the arguments. I'd like to be able to address them directly if they become a real concern.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your taking the time to be here tonight. I think that provides, a level of comfort to council anyway. But our staff will take care of all of that, and if there's something that needs to change, it would come back to members of council. But I think at this time they'll certainly work. And I thank you for being here tonight, Councillor Beddoes and McMath.
Yeah, I guess to your worship, one of the problems I see here is that, like in this development, I get no details as a councillor. I mean, we get no briefing as to, what's planned for some of these areas until, some problem crops up like today. I had a look at it today, fortunately, but it wasn't even the final draft. It was just an idea. And I have not had time to study it, and I suspect some of the neighbors have. So it goes back to the root cause again. If we delegate this authority, then how do we possibly address the concerns of the public when something like this comes up? And I'm loath to intervene in staff. I mean, staff does have to have the ability to do what staff does. But there's something missing here, and I feel out of touch. I think I'm paid a tremendous amount of dollars you pay me to have a look at some of these things, and I'm in an information gap.
No, that's very fair, Councillor Beddoes, and I think now that Norm McInnes has landed with us, then that's sort of the conversation that we're having, is that internal piece. So how can councillors have that information on hand so when you're asked, so that we're not reacting, you know, okay, put a letter, bring it to council, we'll discuss it there, that you can have that information. So that's part of it, is always what questions do councillors have and what information do we need, and then how can we marry that up so that you know, in this case, you know, when things are approved and they sit sometimes, you know, then suddenly a building permit comes and they go, and then we get asked, like, what's happening there? And it's like, that's a good question. So it's just having that part, and that's part of the conversation I've had with Mr. McInnes. Councillor McMath?
Thanks, Al. Mine was more just a point of order. This forum is so that topics can be brought forward and be discussed and opinions can be given. But please don't speak when other people are speaking. Whether you wholeheartedly agree, don't clap. Whether you completely and passionately disagree, please don't speak while other people are speaking. It's incredibly disrespectful, it's distracting, and it's intimidating for some people, especially in this forum.
Thank you, Councillor McMath. Councillor Bateman?
Yes. Thank you, and to you neighbors for showing up tonight. Of course, this matter we're dealing with tonight dates back to a pair of zoning decisions in 2017. We have 7004 Melrick Place and 2150 Melrick Place, and both these properties have been melded into the one today. And those were split decisions back in 2017. So I think this current council might have had some other ideas. As Mr. Dolan has pointed out, this kind of density is quite far removed from the town center. And I guess one question to you, sir, is you're putting 47 units into this property. And hence, there is no, you know, the tenets of new urbanist planning, I think, is to create pocket neighborhoods with some green space and opportunities for community interaction. And I wonder whether 47 could be downsized to 40, or then your affordability issues kick in, I'm sure, at that point.
Over here. Your bylaws are there, and someone like myself comes in and spends millions of dollars to work within those bylaws. This is something that would be a normal process that's just approved without coming to council. And so for me to come and do that, or fellow developers to come in and spend the money, they have to have confidence that the existing OCP and the existing bylaws are respected, the same way on the other end. So this conversation, I think, is a courtesy for all of us, me to you, you to me, neighbors, and I fully respect that. As far as new urbanism, I feel very comfortable to discuss that as much as you'd like. This particular project is for attainable, respectful property that can work so somebody can own a home for $1,000 a month. That's a big deal. And your existing density is so much higher. If I decided to not do this and brought you what was just done next door, the density is probably 25 to 40% higher with cars and with existing space. I mean, the total footprint here is 1,200 square feet. The maximum square footage I could put in there would be a maximum of 4,000 feet. So the idea is suggesting that this is taking up more space. I could put a full house there and this little cottage there in the existing bylaws. So there's nothing here, we're not even asking for a variance. I think what's happening is we've gone forward as the progress is there, and if there's something that's going to change, then at least the developers on this side, and I can understand there's two sides, But on this end, all I'm doing is following the rules and regulations have been put there. So I'd like to be given the same courtesy and respect, recognizing that as the same as the neighbors, and I'd love to be working together to make sure that everybody understands what I'm doing and addressing all of those issues. But I believe that I have all of those addressed for any of the questions to give everybody comfort that I'm not looking to go and take density down. If it comes down to it, I can't, then all of a sudden there's no affordability, so why don't just go do what everybody else does? And if that's what we want as a community, then that's what we'll get. But I think this is unique and something special that's tucked in, hidden away, where it's a little pocket community, like you say, on a little sliver of land that's pretty useless in some other ways. And unless you can get the prices down, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, other speakers this evening?
Ellen Lures, I'd like to speak to the same subject. As part of the OCP, we have the agricultural plan, which is not being used. And in the agricultural plan, what we talk about is that if there's any subdivisions put in, that there's supposed to be community gardens provided in the subdivisions. And something this dense, as Councillor Beddoes says, or you can't even grow any food there, and how's that sustainable? So that should be part of the discussion if we're going to talk bylaws. There should be a community garden supplied. There's 47 homes, 15 extra parking spots, hardly does it. And this gentleman owns West Coast Storage. Well, as it was suggested before, there should be storage spaces on the property so that boats and trailers and campers can be stored inside and not on the streets. These are all things that need to be addressed, and it's unfortunate when these subdivisions come up and they get approved, and this is never dealt with. The OCP should be dealt with, the zoning bylaw needs to be dealt with, we all know that, and I really wish we'd get on it so that we could get things in order. But the agricultural plan can be discussed by staff with this developer, and there can be a community garden there and something that's ready and up and going. The density, of course, is way out of line, and it doesn't fit in the OCP. So,
But we're not here for a rezoning tonight. All of those conversations have come and gone, and even the development permit is being addressed by staff. So we received a letter from the residents, and we're here to just to address some of their concerns. So I hear your point, Mrs. Lures, but those conversations have, and the developer, as you said, and as our staff said, is in compliance.
I realize
with
that, and I've been
everything.
here many years with
Okay.
the same development site and everything that's happened there, but nothing has ever been followed through what the OCP is. And here we are again, and it still hasn't been done, and now we're development permit changing again.
We're not
what the
changing
Well-
anything with this.
Yeah, affordable housing, allegedly, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers this evening?
Oh, there we go. My name is Leah Grono, and I reside at 6996 at the top of the proposed Viewpoint Estates cottages. I've lived there for 20 years. I've dealt with the Stone Ridge development, the Viewpoint Estates 7-year on and off development, and now there is this one coming on. I've got some concerns about soil contamination in that area. The previous owner, Dave Clark, he had oil drums and machinery parked there, which I could clearly see from my little residence across the way. I believe those things have been removed, but who knows what is possibly leaked into the soil. I'm also concerned about runoff from that particular piece of property because, of course, it runs down to many of the residents who are behind me that are here tonight, and they have gardens and areas as well. Plus, there is a pond in that area that I think needs to be considered with water runoff. So I think these are all things we have to look at as well when we're looking at this development. My other concerns are a fence and sound barriers. At the top where the proposed development is, they're looking at 3 larger lots and housing there, not in the sense of the cottages that many people are concerned about. So more of a regular style home or possible duplex with suites. So that's what I will be facing right on the property line. So I really need my privacy insured as much as possible, so I know there is a fence that is in place already. However, I would love to see hedging on my side so that it can grow up higher than the fence to provide the privacy that has been taken away from me from all of these developments that have been basically come through in the last 20 years. It was 50 undeveloped acres behind me when I moved there. It's gone. So, and all the trees in Viewpoint are gone. So, as we talk about what we need for sustainability, in terms of gardens, trees, clean air, we need to make sure those things stay, not taken away. The other thing is dust control and blasting. Oh, am I over my 2 minutes? Oh, sorry. So I just want to make sure that those things are concerned because it's right beside me as well. Considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grono. Just over to staff in terms, if you could comment on how stormwater is addressed. We understand that you're working with the developer on the privacy and those parking, those sorts of things, and then some of the other concerns about contaminants and the like.
Yes, Your Worship, Council. So stormwater management plan will be required with the subdivision application, as is on all subdivisions, where they have to maintain all of their water on site. We can also make sure there's a soil test done, but there is no evidence of any soil contaminations historically, and it did not come up through the rezoning, but I'm sure the applicant would be willing to provide some sample tests and the results. Also, some of the concerns that had come up were regarding traffic on Melrick, and we talked about that as a group, and the fire chief has reached out to one of the contacts that they provided about discussing making no parking on the street or fire lane only, like discussing different solutions from his perspective. So that's in the works. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor McMath?
Sorry, could you just also cover off on the blasting and the dust?
Sorry, yes. There are anyone doing blasting within the district or anywhere is required to get a blasting permit, and that doesn't come from the district. It comes from the province. Our Director of Development Services could expand on that if he likes. He knows more about it than I do. But if there's complaints or issues, they will come to the district, and then we would follow up with the contractor that was issued the permit, and they're issued permits for the entire district for a period of a year, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry, just one more follow. Yeah. And then, so anyone surrounding that development will have the contact information?
Yes, they have to notify all surrounding residents through the blasting bylaw of their times of blasting and their methods. There are requirements for maintaining dust and such. So I know with Viewpoint Estates last year, there was some issues, and I believe that contractor went out and hired cleaning companies to go into all of the residences. So obviously if that was a problem here, it would probably be the same solution.
Thank you.
Okay, other members of the public tonight? Okay. Mr. McInnes?
Your Worship, just a point of order. The procedural bylaw, section 23, subsections 1 and 2, there is a 2-minute limit
Yes.
on each speaker, but there is a 10-minute limit for section 7 on the agenda. For that to be go beyond the 10 minutes, it does need an affirmative vote by council to extend that period.
Okay, so look to extend, motion to extend the time limit, moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
You just turned it off. If you could turn it on again.
Thank you. So I don't have to keep my finger there. I'm Hester Vare, and we're new here. Actually, we moved just a little under a year and a half to this particular area with Viewpoint Cottages. I have 3 things to say. Some of them are a bit repetitive, but I'll try and be quick. So the density. I have no problem with the actual development. I just think it's in the wrong place. I remember when we had the meeting with the city, somebody said that it was a creative interpretation of the bylaws, which it is. Basically, if you allow for a family dwelling plus a suite, not everybody puts a suite in, and not everybody rents the suite all the time. Often suites are used for, you know, family members that might come and go. But when you put up 2 buildings, even if they're small buildings, that's a dramatic increase in density. So I'd encourage you to actually go and look at the area. The streets aren't broad. There's a couple, I live on a cul-de-sac. There's another cul-de-sac down the other end. I don't think there's anybody here today from Larkspur, but when I drive along Larkspur to get to my house, and as everybody leaving this development would have to, there's kids out there on tricycles. It's not a neighborhood really for high density. It isn't that we don't want affordable housing. It isn't that we don't think this is interesting and innovative. We realize how dramatically it's going to change the character of that. And you don't have the streets for it up there. You really don't. It's going to be very strange. So just that was quick. The second one is water. So when I moved in, when we bought our house, which was last February, we bought it and found out we couldn't put down a floor we wanted to because the basement was flooded. Not that you have basements out here. The crawl space, thank you. We're from the Maritimes originally. So it turns out that there have been a number of previous developments in the area which have rerouted the water courses, and a number of houses have been flooded. And, you know, that's all been dealt with. That's all in the past, of course. But it makes each and every one of us in that neighborhood very nervous about when they cut the trees down, which, you know, the developer said that they didn't do it, but they're down, right? And they're down further up from other developments.
That's the time.
What holds the water?
So as Ms. Campbell had said, the development will need to put together a stormwater management plan
Yes.
and take care of the
They
water.
did explain that to
Yeah.
us. They were wonderful. What I'm saying is there any way that we could receive that? And what was said to me was it'll be kind of technical, but could somebody in pretty plain language tell us what the plans are to manage that water so we can look out for it? I live right next to that pond, and if water doesn't make it in the correct way in the runoff, it's my house it's going to hit. The third thing is the blasting. That I really would like it if there was a way for it to actually be mandated that that the developer check out all the houses beforehand. We will be quite close to this one. The previous developments had been quite far away. Now maybe you're all used to it here, but for us, we moved here and it's like kaboom, and the house shakes, and that was from blocks and blocks away. So I'm pretty concerned about how the blasting is going to affect us. So what do? I get a crack in my foundation, I go and say, so this happened just last week, and who believes me? So what kind of protection do we have?
So I'll ask staff just to comment on, if you could comment on how the blasting is managed. We have a bylaw for that.
Yeah, I'll defer to Director of
Okay.
Development Services.
There is a bylaw, and the blasting companies don't have they get a approval for a year, on a yearly basis, I believe. And they do have some obligation to inform both the district and neighbors within a radius.
Well, I don't think the radius could be big enough, because we certainly didn't.
Where I live, there's been blasting for 10 years.
Right.
Some of it's close, some of it's far, it's ongoing,
Well,
sometimes I
this will
hear
be
it,
very
sometimes
close,
I
and I'm
don't.
much more nervous about it.
Then you would notice it and then contact the district.
So my major concern is the density, and it's the idea that this bylaw allows for a house and a suite, and it's been creatively interpreted, which is fine and dandy, but in this circumstance, that creative interpretation is going to lead to a dramatic increase in density, which is out of character with that neighborhood. So if the bylaw allows it, could you please, at some point, look at that bylaw again, because that creative interpretation may work somewhere else, but it doesn't work in this neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you.
comment. Councillor Beddoes?
I would just suggest to the speaker that she get her phone out, take a picture of every square inch of her foundation and walls, and document what now, and if there's any problems come up, then they can be addressed. But be a little bit proactive, because if something does happen, that's your best evidence.
Yeah. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you, Worship. So density it keeps continually being brought up. That is dealt with at zoning.
Yes.
They have the right to develop the density that they're proposing. So unless the landowner chooses to rezone and downzone to limit that, that is their right. And if the form takes two small units versus a large house and a small unit, you're going to have probably less bedrooms, less cars. So something to think about.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. And also, just to confirm, duplexes by building code are not allowed to have suites in them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
By bylaw, by zoning bylaw.
By zoning bylaw. So a duplex, if it's put on, because I heard duplexes mentioned, are legally not allowed to have suites.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Beddoes, and then
Yeah, just one last thing. I mean, I've been here long enough now where we keep running into these problems, and it goes back to the OCP. And it behooves us to get on with getting the OCP done. Over 10 years old, and things have changed dramatically in 10 years. And this would be an opportunity to address a lot of these issues. And I'm a little frustrated that we're not there yet, but I have faith in my colleagues that we will get there. So we need to get there.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on into our consent agenda. So here we have items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. So there's two options here. One is that council adopt these items and that we would vote on them through general consent, or should council wish to pull one for debate, then this would be the opportunity to pull it off. Or we would just move them, and in doing so, that would move the recommendations as they are there.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Treat them as one and move that their way.
Okay, so Councillor Beddoes is moving that council adopt items 8.1 through 8.3 by general consent. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McMath. Any discussion on these items here? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Okay. We're into item 9, please. So that is 9.1, payment in lieu of park dedication for 6484 Golledge Avenue. So over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight we're here to discuss the cash in lieu option for a subdivision at 6484 Golledge Road, which I will show on a picture. Maybe. Okay, what's going on? Oh. As shown on the diagram, that's the property in general, and I'll get to the subdivision layout in a minute. Staff are currently reviewing an application for a proposed subdivision at 6484 Golledge Avenue, which would create 4 lots. Before the approving officer is able to consider the final approval of the subdivision, the requirements of 510 of the Local Government Act must be addressed. This portion of the Act requires where three more or additional lots are created through subdivision process, up to 5%, and I'll re-emphasize, up to 5% of land or payment in lieu must be provided for parks purposes. Because the applicant has proposed payment in lieu of park land dedication, council must determine if the payment in lieu of the dedication is acceptable. Can you put up that? Oh. As promised, there's the layout of the subdivision. When a landowner proposes a subdivision which create 3 or more additional lots, at least one lot is 2 hectares in size or smaller, Section 510 of the Local Government Act requires the owner to provide up to 5% of land dedication. The Act gives the owner the option of dedicating land or providing the equivalent payment in lieu of dedication. However, the Act also states that because the district's official community plan contains policies and designations respecting the type of and location of future parks, the local government may determine whether the owner must provide park dedication or payment in lieu. Because the Parks, Trails, and Master Plan 2009 does not make specific recommendation for park acquisition in this vicinity of the property, staff recommend council consider accepting payment in lieu of park dedication to be added to the appropriate reserve fund for future parkland acquisition purchase. The Parks and Trails Master Plan recommends that where opportunities for park dedication during subdivisions do not coincide with the Parks Trails vision outlined in the plan, the district should accept cash in lieu to be added to the Park Reserve Fund. Governed by Bylaw 47, Parkland Reserve Fund Bylaw 2001, funds placed in the Park Reserve Fund must be used for the purpose of acquiring park land. The PTMP does not identify this neighborhood for strategic park acquisition. Section 510(6) of the Local Government Act gives guidance to staff on determining the cash in lieu if there's to be cash in lieu scenario to comply with the section of the Local Government Act. If the local government and the owner agree on the value of the land and the value of land which they have agreed, I'm not exactly sure what that line is intended to do, but I think it was left gray for a purpose, so if there was a to and froing, the district or the municipality and the owner could agree on a value. The average market value of the land proposed in the subdivision calculated as the value would be at the date of the preliminary approval of the subdivision. Preliminary layout approval of the subdivision is also known as a conditional approval, and it's a forerunner to final approval of the subdivision. And then, as though the land is zoned to permit the proposed use, and as though the works and services necessary to the subdivision have not been installed. So in other words, they were the Local Government Act was trying to capture a fair market value without all the works and services, roads, et cetera, being put into the property. In this case, the market value of the property in January 2019 was $665,000, which was a selling price. This price included a dwelling unit on the property valued at $181,000. This leaves the value of the land at $484,000. Staff in discussion with the applicant agreed that each of the 4 lots would be valued at $121,000, equaling $484,000. In further discussion with the applicant, pursuant to Section 510(6), and this allows the applicant and the district to discuss and deliberate on a value, it was agreed that there would be 3 new lots created equaling a value of $363,000. 5% of that equals $18,150, which the applicant has offered. Prior to entering into the discussions with the applicant pursuant to Section 510(6) of the Local Government Act, staff calculated the 5% cash in lieu would be $20,615 based on market value of the land and the assessed value of the building. The difference based on this way of calculating and the agreed value the difference was $2,465. Given the small difference of the calculation, staff feel that the offer of $18,150,000 is acceptable. And the recommendation is from staff to accept that amount in cash in lieu.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howitt. Questions from councillors? Councillor McMath?
If the difference is small, why would they not accept the $20,615?
Pursuant to the Act, the staff is permitted to have a dialogue with the applicant and agree on an offer, and staff is agreeing with the $18,000 offer. I did not go back and ask for the $2,000 more. I thought it was a fair and equitable offer.
I'm here if you want to talk. Okay. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Logans?
I'll move the recommendation from staff.
Okay, so it's moved then that council directs staff to accept $18,150 as payment in lieu of the required 5% parks contribution attributable to the proposed subdivision of Lot 2, Block 2, Section 14, Sooke Land District Plan VIP 5855, 6485 Golledge Avenue for application ENG 03253. Seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any discussion or further questions? Councillor Bateman?
Not questions, but it's interesting. This area is about to undergo dramatic change with our BC housing projects. Grasslands is now selling. I anticipate this is the first of a series of legitimate building we're going to be seeing in that area, as with Melrick Place and 3 Point Properties. The bylaws and zoning allow this. The question I still have, and I had it during the election and shared it with our corporate officer in hopes of getting an answer. I was trying to add up how many approved lots for building we have. And I came up with 1,600, and yet there are many situations just like this where we're seeing one home become four on a single lot. And I really wonder how we can do any longer-term planning in this community until we have a real sense of what is our growth potential and a plan around that, these absolutely legal and right decisions that a private property owner can do. So yeah, that's just a statement.
Okay, perhaps staff can think about that and get back to us on that, because it's not related to the particular application, but it's a fair question in terms of the planning work, and I suspect through the OCP and planning that work that we're doing, we'll get those answers. Councillor Beddoes on the motion?
I just want to say I concur with Councillor Bateman.
Okay, we see some agreement here. Okay, anyway, on the motion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, we're good. Thank you. Next up is the development permit for 2201 Otter Point Road, John Phillips Memorial Park. And over to our staff, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. This is a development permit for the District of Sooke to install a washroom facility and water fountain in John Phillips Memorial Park. The proposed washroom is located immediately adjacent to the pathway parallel to the Municipal Hall parking lot. As you can see on the screen, there is a streamside protection and enhancement area, or SPIA boundary, and there's a required 6-meter side lot line setback. The siting of the washroom does not encroach on either setback. This is a view of the site from sort of beside the garbage area at the bottom of the stairs as you enter the park from Municipal Hall parking lot, and from across the path towards where the front of the new building will be. The site for the washroom is about 1.5 meters lower in grade than the municipal parking lot. There's also a very well-established landscape buffer, as you can see in the photo, between the parking lot and the proposed washroom. The washroom facility will be barely visible from Municipal Hall. And finally, the grand reveal. The proposed washroom will look like this example. This meets the form and character requirements in the OCP, as there's a mix of wood, stone, and corrugated metal, and there's a natural color scheme. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And yes, we added the rock just to make it more attractive, because it was all just brown, right? But there can be murals on it. I don't know what the groan is all about. I'm very excited that we have this amenity coming to our park after a year or so, I think. And just a strange question, do we charge ourselves a development fee?
Through your worship, yes, we do.
Okay, all right. Okay, so questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
I think it's wonderfully functional, and it has a bit of character, I guess. I'd love to see a mural on those doors or something to just...
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you need a place to go, this will be very, very efficient, and it's long overdue, so thank you. Yeah.
Councillor McMath?
I can't tell. I'm just trying to look at the symbols on the doors. Are these gender neutral, like unisex washrooms, or are they?
They're universal and accessible, both of them. Yeah, so the intent was that, yeah, they would be universal, and you would be able to get either a baby stroller or a wheelchair in there comfortably and turn around.
Perfect, thank you.
Do we know when these are going to arrive?
Your worship, if you wait for the next item, Ms. Hooper is probably a better resource for when they'll be here.
Got it. Okay, we just have a movie in the park coming. Okay, other comments or questions? Is there a graffiti spray, like anti-resistant graffiti spray on those doors? Because I think before we get to doing a mural, someone else may will in an unattractive manner, so just...
I got the head nod, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so there's a motion here that council issue development permit PLN 001451 for the purpose of constructing municipal facilities at 2201 Otter Point Road. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. I'll save it to the next question. Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Everts. And that would be the next one. Welcome, Ms. Hooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the interest of time, the district staff decided that bringing back, separating out the two, I'll start afresh. In the interest of time, we divided our request for quotes to supply and install the washrooms at both John Phillips Memorial Park and Whiffen Spit Park. So that is why you're seeing just the award in front of you today for the John Phillips Memorial Park supply and install of the septic tank and of the fountain. So we want to point out that we need a floodplain exemption for the Whiffen Spit washroom. So therefore, we split the request for quotes, and we'll come back to you in September. Should you approve this resolution tonight, it's important to note that we will be requiring additional funds to install the septic system or the septic tanks and the fountains at Whiffen Spit in the future, but that will come in under a separate report and resolution.
Okay, so the question is, should council progress this? When would we expect these to be ready for use?
For the John Phillips Memorial Park, we expect construction to start next Monday for the septic system, and the intention is to have them ready to roll, so to speak, on the 17th of August.
Okay, so...
Well before. We have a week and a half of grace period.
Okay, and so the actual unit has arrived? Or the, like...
The structure itself has not. It's going to come with the Timberwolf supplier, and he will come and install that at the same time. They'll come as a unit.
Okay, and then is the water feature a different party, or is that the same?
It's the fountain, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be supplied and installed by Ramida in this situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then the other thing that, should council progress this, it would be good to share this, that this facility exists for trail users because there isn't anything, people are finding other ways. Are using the bushes, right? So there, you may not know, like there just has to be like either media communication and then on our park finder or some to say, okay, here's where the washroom is.
Through your worship, the mapping and wayfinding that we're doing with the Wandafuka Trail Society will have it clearly indicated, so people know that there's one at least there, and we can do a press release as well.
Yeah, that would be great, fantastic. Questions? No, I've come across people in the park, that's why, so, you know. Well, I'm excited. It's an important amenity, and it's the first, you know, we need one in Sooke, and we can put a ribbon around it and cut the ribbon. And then there's a water feature, like you can fill a water bottle for your dog. I think it's fantastic, anyway. Small moves, right? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, and I guess if I recall the original conversations on this, the key with this vault toilet is it's vandal-proof, effectively, unlike our Ed McGregor Park.
Through your worship, yes, flush toilets, because they are generally heated and have some of the finer amenities, they are prone to people living rough, to want to stay inside of those, so we have to actually leave them locked only for events, and therefore a pit toilet is actually perceived as safer because people don't want to linger in these pit toilets.
Okay.
And just to follow up on Mrs. Luer's point around this letter we received, did that give you any concern, or?
That's a civil issue that we won't comment upon.
Okay, so we have a motion here, our recommendation that council approve Ramita Enterprises as a successful proponent under the request for quotes for the supply and installation of a septic vault and water fountain at John Phillips Memorial Park in the amount of $20,809.43, and that council authorizes CAO and mayor to enter into a general services agreement with Ramita Enterprises. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor, or just all those in favor? Opposed, it's carried unanimously, so we're good there. And that's it. That's exciting. Thank you, Ms. Hooper, and we look forward to the Whiff and Spit one as well.
Do call me for the ribbon cutting. I'll be happy to be there.
We will all be there together. We'll bring out the big scissors. We've cut ribbons at Brooks Park. We have a washroom now. We have a water fountain. It's fantastic. Small things. We are.
Can the ribbon be made out of toilet paper?
Why did I know that question was coming?
Note how I left my mic off for that.
Well, maybe. Okay. Bylaws section, item 10.1. We have the Sooke Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw number 739-14738. And that is here that council adopt the bylaw cited as Sooke Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw number 739-14738, 2019. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Bateman. And we have gone through a public input session on this, so any further concerns? Nope. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 742 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw for Cannabis Production. So this followed a report that we received from members from staff. So, Mr. Diebler, nice logo.
Through your worship, staff were directed at the June 10th council meeting to prepare the necessary bylaws and/or policies related to the regulation of cannabis production. An official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment have subsequently been drafted and are being presented tonight for consideration of first and second reading. The proposed amendments were informed by extensive research and engagement consisting of the following: discussions with staff from other municipalities, such as the City of Kamloops and the Regional District of Central Kootenay. Stakeholder engagement, including meeting with individuals interested in operating cannabis production facilities in Sooke. Staff also organized a tour of a soon-to-open cannabis production facility in the neighboring CRD Wandafuka electoral area, which was attended both by staff and members of council as well. And finally, an online survey was prepared for the general public using the online survey tool SurveyMonkey. This survey received a total of 166 responses and included a number of important key findings, such as half of respondents said they were not concerned about cannabis production in Sooke overall on a general basis. Of the more particular concerns that people have related to cannabis production, the top selections were proximity to cannabis production facilities, the proximity of cannabis production facilities to schools, rather, odor, and the overall number of production facilities. Most respondents, 60%, agreed that the district should differentiate between large-scale cannabis production standard and smaller-scale cannabis production micro. And finally, in terms of location, respondents were most supportive of cannabis production taking place in industrial areas or rural and or agricultural areas as the second most selected option. The proposed official community plan amendment consists of removing and replacing an entire section, Section 6, Part 4, temporary use permits. It would allow cannabis production micro outside of the town center and CD zones on rural zone properties that permit agriculture intensive as a use and on all commercial zoned properties. It is recommended that this section of the official community plan also be updated generally to increase consistency with the Local Government Act, as there's currently some discrepancies and out-of-date language. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which accompanies the official community plan amendment, includes the creation of two new definitions, cannabis production micro and cannabis production standard. It also includes the exclusion of these uses from the definition of agriculture, the addition of a cannabis production micro subsection to the temporary use permit section, as per the official community plan amendment, the exclusion of cannabis production from the home-based business regulations, the addition of a cannabis production specific use regulations section, and the addition of cannabis production micro and cannabis production standard as permitted uses under specific industrial zones. I'll just quickly go into more detail on what those specific use regulations are. So they include a 400 meters squared maximum gross floor area for cannabis production micro facilities, a minimum 30-meter setback from all lot lines to all buildings and structures in rural zones, a 15-meter minimum setback from all lot lines to all buildings and structures in commercial zones, and finally, the requirement that all cannabis production micro in commercial zones take place inside of buildings or structures. There are also 3 alternatives to this recommended approach that have been prepared and are in greater detail in the report. One of those options, of course, being the status quo. As I said, they're summarized for review through the report. Staff is recommending the amendments as described in bylaw number 742 and bylaw number 741, as detailed on the screen. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diebler, for your work on this file. Should council wish to progress this following staff recommendation, then it'll move to a public hearing, which would be in September then? Okay. So questions for Mr. Diebler or for staff at this point? Councillor Bateman?
Well, it's just, you know, this is such in-depth material, so thank you, Mr. Diebler, for helping us through. When Mrs. Hall suggests we create these bylaws, certainly beyond my pay grade, so thank you for bringing these forward. The one thing I had, as I noted in the feedback, it was quite a mixed bag between the pro and the con and the middle ground. But a number of comments spoke around Sooke bud and this whole nature of micro and the micro growing. And I didn't see an option there if we only went with micro cultivation licenses as opposed to the standard cultivation. Is that an option for us?
Yeah, if council desired, we could potentially have cannabis production micro only permitted. However, properties that are designated ALR are permitted cannabis production as a farm use activity. So, and that applies generally to our setback rules and other specific regulations would still apply. However, you could potentially have a standard scale production facility on ALR land, regardless of whether or not we had chosen to allow it.
Now, I noted there are no size restrictions or limits on a standard license. You've set a 400 square meters, I think, or feet, meters, for micro.
400 square meters for the micro facilities
right.
only.
But not for standard. It's just not done. Okay. And interestingly, this BC Canna Park at the Sooke Industrial Park, it has a standard license, correct? And yet it is designed for micro growers, if I understand correctly.
My understanding of the facility that the tour took place at is at the actual building, which had been toured, has a standard production license. However, they will be doing standard processing for some micro cultivators in a surrounding park. Is the model that they've chosen.
So that model actually makes it economically viable for a micro grower to actually get into the business. Because as I understand, you've stated in your report there's just one other micro license in Canada at the moment. But a second one came through in Hearst, Ontario, Northern Ontario, and its owner claims to have invested $700,000 prior to receiving his micro cultivation license. And I think this relates to Health Canada's designation that a fully built site that meets all requirements of the cannabis regulations must be ready at the time of application.
Yes, so you're correct in that there is that requirement for a fully built site, and that is an obstacle and a barrier for some. However, that's what Health Canada has chosen to require.
And finally, in your consultation with, I think it was 9 local individuals, is that kind of money realistic for them to enter the market?
During the meeting, it was discussed that was a barrier. However, that's something that the federal government has decided to require for those facilities, and the regulations that are proposed are what staff feels is appropriate for Sooke.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I feel comfortable moving this to first and second reading, and then it allows our steely-eyed residents to have a look at these 30-something pages, whatever it is, and give us some feedback, because, again, it's the public who we serve. So I'll make that motion. Do I have to read it all out, or could I just make it?
It would help if you read it. Just hold on, Ms.
Okay.
Shada. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask that council do these 3 resolutions individually as they are pertaining to separate bylaws.
Yeah, so we would do them one at a time on the screen. And I do read them out for the benefit of people viewing at home.
Okay.
So if you want to start this one here.
Unless somebody else has something else to say, that council give first and second reading to official community plan amendment bylaw number 742, brackets 400-13, 2019, a bylaw to amend the bylaw number 400, official community plan bylaw. 210, for the purpose of allowing temporary use permits for cannabis production micro facilities, and for updating section 6.0, part 4, temporary use permits generally. That's my motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McMath. A question that I have, and so this deals with, so what I'm thinking about is the agricultural land. So lands that are farm, because the province has come down that all agricultural lands deem cannabis production as a permitted farm use. So in which case, should cannabis be grown there, then they would be taxed at the farm rate, right? And so there has been some pushback from other local governments because the province had done that without consultation with local government. And that is a concern for many when it comes to food security and to see greenhouses converted into production, and there's no control in that case. So that's something that there is a position on right now that is being worked through. But is there anything that we could do to control that or not if it's through the agricultural, if it's something that's permitted by the Agricultural Land Commission? Because I've sort of heard that other municipalities are now scrambling to put in bylaws in place to prohibit it because their concern is food production being converted to cannabis production and not obtaining the necessary commercial or industrial tax base that it would bring, because agriculture is the lowest. So is there any piece that we could do there?
Through your worship, yeah, the Agricultural Land Commission considers cannabis production a farm use if it's, considers it a farm use, and municipalities cannot prohibit it if it's grown outdoors or in a soil base. In terms of your question about the tax assessment, I was under the impression that the BC assessment does not consider cannabis production, does not tax it as a farm use, but
okay.
I would like to clarify that, but that was what I believe.
Okay, that would just be something that I would like to find out there, because then you would see where people would then move to, and in some cases maybe follow it, maybe the land makes sense, but if we have viable food, like lands that would be ideally suited for food production. From a food security perspective, I would just hate to lose those land, to have it. So just be good to know what our options, if any, are available. But that is a position that there is some pushback. Anyway, okay, more on that later. Any other questions from members of council on first and second? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So the next part is then that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw 741, 600-73, 2019, a bylaw to amend bylaw 600, Sooke zoning amendment, or pardon me, Sooke zoning bylaw 2013, for the purpose of adding the definitions of cannabis production micro and cannabis production standard, for excluding these uses from the definition of agriculture, for the regulation of these uses, and for allowing temporary use permits for cannabis production micro use. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor McMath, seconder, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion on this part here? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. And thirdly, that a public hearing be scheduled for the official community plan amendment bylaw number 742, 500-13, 2019, and zoning amendment bylaw number 741, 600-73, 2019, in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Logans. So that public hearing will be in September. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Diebler. Okay, 10.3. OCP for zoning amendment, bylaw amendment, and official community plan amendment 5490 Sooke Road. Ms. Johnson, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The purpose of this rezoning and OCP amendment application is to bring an existing veterinary clinic into conformance with the current zoning bylaw. In regards to the history, the existing vet clinic was a conforming use from 1992 to October 2006 under CRD Bylaw 2040. And records show that the owner went through a rezoning and an OCP amendment application process in 1992, and a vet clinic use was permitted on the rural zoned property. It was with adoption of zoning bylaw number 270 in October 2006 that the veterinary clinic use was not carried over as a permitted use in the rural zones, and this is why the use is considered legal non-conforming today. The other reason for the application is that the owner would like to expand the waiting area of the vet clinic, but can't move forward until because structural alterations or additions cannot be made to a building while there is a non-conforming use as per the Local Government Act. In correspondence with the owner on zoning options, as explained in the staff report, the owner has agreed with the recommended option of rezoning the property to neighborhood commercial. The property is designated agriculture in the OCP. The subject property is an isolated agricultural parcel surrounded by lands in the Gateway Residential designation. The Gateway Residential designation is an area within which low-density residential growth will occur, along with some associated neighborhood-appropriate small-scale commercial development. The subject property, although shown to be in the agricultural land reserve, is exempt from the ALR restrictions on use of land as per the Agricultural Land Commission Act. The ALC has been aware of this exemption since 1992, and they have stated no concerns with the proposed OCP change to Gateway Residential, and there's no concerns to the zoning change either to neighborhood commercial. The zoning map shows the area to be predominantly rural residential, with a few commercially zoned properties nearby. Abutting the subject property to the east is an equestrian facility with a hobby farm and residence. Sooke Road is to the south, Ludlow is to the west, and the Galloping Goose Trail is to the north. The vet clinic has been part of this neighborhood fabric since 1989, and it has provided a valuable service, is providing valuable service to Sooke and its neighboring communities. The proposed neighborhood commercial zone permits a variety of uses. Staff have suggested, well, in considering the immediate rural residential neighborhood, staff have suggested a number of uses to be prohibited on the property, namely a brew pub, convenience store, cooperative housing, gas bar, microbrewery, personal services, place of worship, and pub. This was discussed with the owner, and they also agreed. Just for the record, they have no plans to do any of these uses. They are remaining with the vet clinic, but they just wanted to have the flexibility of some opportunity down the road should they wish to add a commercial use or change the use. But like I said, there's no plans for that. There are outdoor paddocks that are used for treatment of patients, and the owner has requested that the veterinary clinic use not be restricted to an enclosed building. So that changes before you as well. The proposed neighborhood commercial zone will fit within the rural character of the area, and with the proposed site-specific changes to the C1 zone for the subject property as presented, the rezoning and OCP amendment application are consistent with the policy direction of the OCP for allowing limited commercial use in the area, and the applicant or the owner is here tonight should you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'm very glad to see this come forward, as I'm sure council is as well. So thank you for bringing this. Questions from members of council? Councillor McMath?
With the restrictions that you suggested, we're all struggling tonight. My question to you is, if they decide to subdivide into 4 parcels and sell off, will those restrictions follow the new purchase?
Through your worship, it carries with the property. I just want to make a note that subdivision under this zone, it would not, there's not enough land for subdivision as it's outside of the sewer specified area. But yes, within the zone, I believe it would carry through.
Okay.
Usually it's by way of covenant is to ensure that carries through, but
thank you.
I believe so.
Other members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Just curious about these exemptions. So they're looking to potentially one day have pet-related retail and/or a coffee shop. And the key word there is for clients. Now, would that be clear in that it's strictly for their clients as opposed to people pulling in off the road and it becoming a full-scale coffee shop?
Through your worship, in the C1 zone, it wouldn't matter. If the property was to remain within the rural zone and we did site-specific changes to allow the vet clinic, whether the retail use or for clients, it would be more of a gray area. In the neighborhood commercial, we allow retail, so whether it's for the vet clinic or not, it doesn't matter. So.
It's not that we have any plans to do anything like that.
Okay.
20 years from now, it'd be nice to have options.
Question about the coffee shop. Would that be for the patients?
No, that would be the
Just checking. It's a new future. There could be like a whole pet cafe like we've seen in other places, perhaps. The first of its kind. You wouldn't need to worry about driving in that case. They could come up the goose. Or in a self-driving vehicle. Sorry, I'm getting a bit carried away here. Okay, so we have a recommendation in front of us, and that is that council give first and second reading to the bylaw cited as official community plan amendment bylaw number 744, 400-14, 2019. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. The second one is that council give first and second reading to the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw amendment number 743, 600-74, 2019 to amend the zoning of 5490 Sooke Road from rural RU2 to neighborhood commercial C1. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried unanimously. And finally, that a public hearing be scheduled for the official community plan amendment bylaw number 744, 400-14, 2019, and zoning amendment bylaw number 743, 600-74, 2019, in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Would this public hearing be in September then as well? Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, it's carried unanimously. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, so next up is item 10.4 for 2365 Church Road. Ms. Everts.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. This zoning bylaw amendment is for the purposes of permitting a community care facility for approximately 40 children at 2365 Church Road. The applicant is applying to amend the zoning from large lot residential R1 to community facilities P2. The subject property is located in the north of the town center area in a predominantly residential area. Surrounding land uses include large lot residential, small lot residential, and rural residential. The proposed community care facility will be within a 10-minute walk of Journey Middle School and Poirier Elementary School, and is within the vicinity of the proposed 133-unit residential development at Wadham's Farm and the 244 units expected from BC Housing and CRD at the Charters and Drennan sites. This table outlines the differences between the large lot residential and community facilities zone. As this is a conversion of an existing single-family dwelling to a community care facility, a side lot line variance will be required prior to building permit issuance. There will also be a parking variance as the outdoor space requirement of 6 meters squared per child constrains the amount of parking that can be developed on the site. Staff supports these variances and any others that may arise during a development variance permit application review, as childcare is a high need in the community and there are opportunities for street parking and safe vehicle turnaround on Felderhof Road. Council will see the development variance permit application immediately following or at the same meeting as the adoption of the zoning bylaw if it's approved. And that is all I have.
Okay, questions here. Is this property connected to our sewer system? This is an interesting neighborhood because some are and some aren't, and so I'm just curious about that.
To Your Worship, yes, because it zones large lot residential, it has to be in the SSA, and it is.
Okay, and do we know at this point what age of childcare is being proposed here?
I do not know at this point. The applicant is here.
Would you be able to come forward, please, and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mari. So we are planning to have 2 classes. One would be infant toddler with 12 kids maximum, and the other class would be 3 to 5.
Okay.
Actually, it could, like, we could have 30 kids instead of 40. Depends on the VHAN licensing. Like, they would come and measure the place and decide on that. So yeah, that's it. So we would have 2 different ages, hopefully.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Okay, so there is a recommendation here, and that is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 738, 600-72, 2019, to amend the zoning of 2365 Church Road from large lot residential R1 to community facilities P2. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And that a public hearing be scheduled for zoning bylaw amendment number 738, 600-72, 2019, in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Logans, seconded by Councillor McMath. Will that public hearing be in September as well? Okay, just curious. I just want to know what's coming in September. Okay. All right, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, Ms. Everts. Okay, item 10.5, zoning amendment bylaw number 747, 600-75 for 2020 Kaltasin Road. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the last you'll hear from planning tonight, I believe. Yeah. So this zoning bylaw amendments for the purposes of permitting a community care facility at 2020 Kaltasin Road for approximately 16 children. The applicant is applying to amend the zoning from RU4, rural residential, to community facilities P2. The subject property is highlighted in red on the screen, and the applicant will be converting an existing single-family dwelling for the purposes of the community care facility. All conversions need to meet VHA zoning and safety and building code requirements. The property is located in Kaltasin, in the Kaltasin neighborhood. Surrounding land uses are rural residential, RU4, general industrial, M2, aquatic industrial, M4, and medium density multifamily, RM2. The site's within a 5-minute walk of Seabroom Park and Casinos Elementary School, which that's the original location of this facility. The table on the screen, which is also in your report, compares the RU4 zone to the P2 community facility zone. There will be no variances required prior to the issuance of the building permit. All instructionally zoned or institutionally zoned properties are required to install landscaping of at least 1.5 meters high or a decorative fence at least 1.5 meters high, but not higher than 2.5 meters along property lines separating the developed portion of the site from residential zone properties. 1.5 meters of landscaping along the property frontage is also required. In addition to the landscaping and parking requirement is 1 per every five children and must be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or a permeable material, which does not include gravel. This development requires 3 parking stalls. Staff recommends an additional 2 stalls for employee parking for a total of 5. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Campbell. Thank you for putting this together. There was a query from the applicant about providing a letter, but in the report here, it states, where am I here? It's about the VHA licensing that there are under the acts under legislative and facility requirements in the paragraph there, that there are no requirements that municipal zoning approvals be in place prior to the licensing from VHA. So do we have some mechanism to communicate that back to the applicant, that both can be progressed?
Your Worship. So although it may say that VHA always sends to the district these forms with the applicant, which is a municipal zoning approval form.
Okay.
So despite that, they have taken it upon themselves to still have the applicant prove that they have zoning approval, and we often will sign off at the bottom, myself, saying that the zoning is appropriate, and I'll reference a section. So we did receive one for Ms. Pincombe's property in Kaltasin, and we noted it was a request for a license capacity of 8, and the zoning does allow, all zoning allows for child care facilities for 8 or less. So we signed off for that for 8. We did not sign off for 16 or anything above 8. The zoning will have to go through first.
Because we're now in progress there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Questions from members of council? Councillor Logans?
Thank you for bringing this forward. I had a question about the referral response from the traffic impact assessment. It all makes sense to me in terms of the 16 to 32, so I'm happy with how it is at the moment. But I just was confused because I'm more of a visual person on what they meant by the right turn bay within the school zone, and if you could provide a bit of clarity. Oh, good. Oh, aha. Sorry, I must have been looking down.
So they're concerned about traffic coming here and turning right into the school while also turning in here. And then you might also know there is a lot of traffic going to this other existing area, so they're just concerned with what could happen there from a safety perspective.
Yeah, and because I guess the piece that I had the most trouble with here was that there's space to maneuver around vehicles waiting to turn left into Kaltasin. And that, to me, in a school zone sounds very dangerous. I just wonder as well, and this probably isn't a question for staff, but if, like, this is the MOTI, but do they connect with the Ministry of of Education on this? And is SD 62 aware of this as well? Because this was one of the schools that was part of the Safe Routes to School conversation, and that was one of the biggest issues for that exact traffic point, was having cars pass in the school zone as people were turning. So I don't know if the MOTI recommendation is really congruent with what is actually happening and what residents are experiencing in that area.
I think part of it with this school as well is that it's the one that is under capacity, and now all the overflow, like the traffic is getting busier there to the school because now it's becoming the overflow school. So because Sooke Elementary, Poyer, and even John Muir are hitting capacity and overflowing, so then now it's a lottery system to get into these schools, and if you don't get in, then your default is to go to Casinos. So now you have people that, the downside to that is that many residents move to be within walking distance of a school, and then they find out that, oh, actually your child can't go there, you now have to go over here, and now they're having to drive, which is sort of just a problem I have accepting with the school trustees, but that's where they want that school to overflow before they'll build on the land in Sun River and then look at that. So that's sort of the modeling that they're looking at. It'll be interesting to see what the enrollment looks like this September, but they'll give priority to siblings. If there's a younger sibling starting, we'll get priority. And so that's where a lot of parents wanted to go to Sooke Elementary and to walk, and now they're overflowing into Casinos. So it's putting more traffic in that. So I don't think there's a connection there, because otherwise they would have started building in Sun River because of that traffic. But my understanding is that the ministry is looking at this whole section with Idlemore and the new Big Mountain project that opened there and the traffic flow, that they're actually kind of looking at this area in terms of how they can start to slow down or address the congestion in general. Because even the school buses have to make this weird swing to get into the school. It's odd. And all the traffic, it's just a very challenging location, really. So, okay. Councillor McMath?
Just maybe a bit random, but if the property is outside of the ALR, how come a question was sent to the ALR Commission?
Through your worship, are you referring the referral?
Excuse me,
It's a standard. Sometimes they just get caught into the template referral sent out. Usually we remove them from that list of referrals when they're not
It's
in
not
the ALR, but sometimes
time-consuming,
when
though,
it's
it's just
adjacent to ALR, they're referred to.
Is it just like a checkbox you're clicking in like an email list, or is there work that goes into it?
Well, yeah, essentially it is. We have an external referee email list, and we'll go in and remove those that aren't relevant. And in this case, the ALR just wasn't removed,
Okay.
the LC, sorry.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so I guess there will be a traffic light there one day within a decade or so, and I see the ministry does not need a traffic assessment if the student population remains at 16. What I'm curious about, given the excitement that has led us to this point, and it's wonderful that due process is being followed here, will Montessori school be able to open in September with the 8 students? Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, because they have that zoning and those permissions in place.
Right. So then we'll have a public hearing, and once that, if indeed that goes through and we approve this, they can move up to 16.
Yeah, once the zoning is adopted.
Yeah. Well, that's great news. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing I'll share is that the ministry had also looked at doing a roundabout at one point at Idlemore, but because on each corner it hits Casinos Elementary and then it hits the cemetery. So there's like no movement there. So then, of course, the footprint isn't large enough. So I think that's where they're continually reviewing that area. Okay, so we have a recommendation here that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 747, 600-75, 2019 to amend the zoning of 2020 Kaltasin Road from rural residential RU4 to community facilities P2. Moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And that a public hearing be scheduled for zoning amendment bylaw number 747, 600-75, 2019 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. And will this be in September as well? Okay, being consistent. Okay, all those in favor, opposed, it's carried unanimously. And that prior to adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 747, 600-75, 2019, the owner be required to, 1, provide a 4-meter right-of-way dedication along the frontage of 2020 Kaltasin Road and provide cash in lieu for the provision of a 3-meter wide multi-use trail along the frontage of 2020 Kaltasin Road. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any further discussion? See none, all those in favor, opposed, it's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Campbell, and your whole crew there for bringing all these forward to us. So that's wonderful. Okay. Item 11 is a notice of motion from myself, and I am requesting that council agree to waive notice so that we can discuss this tonight.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Beddoes to waive notice on the notice of motion, and seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed is carried unanimously. So sadly, we know that we are, sorry, I'm still at a loss of Councillor Parkinson passing. And so there's sort of twofold here. Is there's a way to recognize and honor Councillor Parkinson in keeping with the wishes that she had. So Councillor Parkinson did not want a formal celebration of life or any type of event, and as she had that, so it's important that we recognize that. However, there's still, I think, a need to do a tribute to Councillor Parkinson. So there's sort of two pieces here. So one of them, the first part being the report would be what would be some options or a project that council could do to, in the memory of Councillor Parkinson. One idea that I had, and I floated by her family, was within John Phillips Memorial Park in the visioning plan, there was a call to have a gazebo in the park that perhaps people could get married at or they could gather at. And so one thought would be to do that. Councillor Parkinson was a marriage commissioner for 10 years, and it's an amenity that would, and a feature that is identified in the plan and also would, you know, draw some, it's part of the necessary infrastructure. There could be a larger plaque done, and we are painting that rock on our 20th anniversary day that could be moved. That was all sort of, and then do suitable plantings in the area. So that's a thought, but there's likely other ideas. So that was just an idea for John Phillips. And so that was sort of one part that has resonated well with her family and friends. And then the other part would be to do a actual tree planting ceremony in Councillor Parkinson's memory on August the 6th in the afternoon. That's a date that as of now, the Premier is available to attend. Elder Shirley Alphonse would be doing a blessing, and it would be a casual affair that we would plan and put some structure onto, but it wouldn't be the big celebration of life, because that was not something that Councillor Parkinson wanted to do. But I think there is a need to have some trees in there, and that's something we'll talk to, should this pass, that selecting the appropriate trees that would last. I have heard that community organization may be interested in putting in a tree. Brenda was a very social person, so one tree just seems a bit lonely. So I thought 2 trees are company, and 3 is a nice friendly crowd. So should a community organization want to plant one, then maybe we select 2 and there would be sort of a trio. But I think others may over time, there'll be a whole grove there. And the land has been cleared, it's just grassy, like there is a need to have more life and more habitat within there, and I think that would be a nice touch. We would put out a media release and look at coordinating the event, but it would be on August the 6th in the afternoon, likely 1 to 3. And we would need to have just some staff to help with the logistics around parking. There's a need to have some reserved spaces for anyone with accessibility to be able to come in, but at the same time, there's people coming and going in and out of the district for just blue boxes, permitting, all that kind of stuff. So just a bit of structure there. So, Councillor Logans?
Yes, thank you for all the time and effort you've put into this. I know it's been difficult for you to come up with a solution on how to move forward and respect Brenda and her family's wishes. And I think this is a great way to do it, and also to have something permanent in our community that represents her. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Logans. Other thoughts from members of council? Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so we'll do this in 2 parts. So the first one would be that council directs staff to prepare a report identifying options for a project to be dedicated in memory of Councillor Brenda Parkinson and provide a cost estimate for the various options, including a memorial plaque. Okay, moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion on that? So that'll give us time just to come up with something. It's a resolution. I just don't want it to be forgotten. So, not that we would forget it, but priority anyway, okay? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And the second part would be in that council directs staff to organize a memorial tree planting ceremony in memory of Councillor Brenda Parkinson in John Phillips Memorial Park on August the 6th. Moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll turn to our staff expertise. We want something that is going to grow well and just, I'm sure they'll come up with something fabulous. It would have to be deer resistant and,
It would have to be true.
you know, because they are grazing in there, so I'm sure they'll come up with a suitable planting that's durable. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so moving into our correspondence, we have some items here that have been pulled and brought over. So I'll start with 12.1. We have a message from Minister Robinson, Municipal Affairs. There's a letter here for information. We will be hearing from the minister at UBCM, of course. Anything? Motion to receive? Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Logans. Is there any other questions about this? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next one is we heard earlier from concerns from residents, and it seems our staff has that all in hand there. So a motion to receive the letter, please. Moved by Councillor Logans, seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'm curious. As this moves forward, as the applicant, not the applicant, the developer, 3 Point Properties, do the neighbors meet directly with the developer at this point, or is it to get their issues dealt with, or is it a matter of the district being an intermediary to facilitate meetings?
Ms. Campbell?
Through your worship, we have met with the 12 individuals and took all of their concerns and relayed them on to the applicant, to the developer. But he has actually been out talking with a number of the neighbors even before the application was submitted. So I believe Ms. Greneau, Leah Greneau, that spoke, has been in regular contact with him about her concerns specific to her property. And right now, we're in the process of him responding to some of these concerns in terms of design and what we can do going forward.
That's good. And in terms of our district road in that area, one of the recommendations or suggestions from the neighbors was some kind of no parking along that stretch or resident only. Yeah, is that possible?
Yeah, yes, we're starting with the fire chief first to see what their concerns are, if it would fit into the avenue of being a fire lane only, so no parking at all, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so we moved and seconded receipt, right? And then you spoke to it? Did I do that? Okay. All right, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.3 is a City of Richmond request for support. So how this is working now, we'll probably start to receive more of these over the summer, and then this will be coming to the floor at UBCM this year. So it's here for your information. So motion to receive by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor McMath. Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in...
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
I'll just say that back in April of last year, we did, or you did, I should say, put forward a, what's the word, climate accountability letter. So that this is consistent with earlier decisions by the district.
Yes, we did send out letters and received one reply, so, okay. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Another one here is also from the City of Richmond on conflict of interest complaint mechanism. Move receipt by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. We have a correspondence here from the Nature Trail Society and a request for a letter of support, which I would be comfortable to do. Was unable to attend the event, though. Any questions? Be a motion then that the mayor draft a letter of support. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. I did, speaking on this, I met with CRD Parks Planning staff today, specific about the work that is happening in the C2C at Harborview and more the trail layout and the intent to connect all the trails all the way from, it would be from Huntback and then eventually all the way through, and then you would end up in Harborview in different ways, and also Charters Road going in, and then you could get on the Goose and then enter into our trail network within town. So anyway, all right, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. We have a letter here from from Ms. Cameron. Ms. Cameron Natchingale? I'm not sure. Anyway, motion to receive, moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And then a letter here on course from the province, or provincial support for libraries here. Councillor Beddoes, or pardon me, Councillor Bateman.
Councillor Bateman, just to say that Viral and other libraries and systems in BC are seeking funding has been frozen since 2009 and from the province. So there's a campaign, and Sooke, in fact, has, or you've sent a letter in support of this. So we're doing our part, along with the City of Victoria and, who's the other? Houston, BC as well.
Yes, many others, and then this will come to the UBCM floor as well for debate. All right, motion to receive, moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Council reports. Sort of gave a little, okay. Math. Okay. We thank everyone for their patience tonight. I kind of gave some updates at the beginning. So I will look then that the July 22nd regular meeting of council be adjourned by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor, opposed, carried unanimously. 9:15.